Welcome back to the episode of Life in the Stands podcast. We have Jake and Zach on the podcast today. We're excited to jump into a couple of recent comments made by a very popular host, Dan Orlovsky, about the Atlanta Falcons, and a very popular writer from Life in the Stands, Kyle Shank. So we'll talk about all of those comments that have been made recently. But first, want to thank everyone for liking and subscribing, watching, or listening on whatever platform you are. We really appreciate the support. And kill that like button if you like these topics, and let us know what you would like to hear in the future down below as well. And with that, Bender, let's jump into probably the less popular analyst, Dan Orlovsky, first. And let's kind of hear what he said about a team in the NFC South recently.
Yeah. First things first, I understand where he's coming from because the Falcons have made a lot of big moves, especially on defense as of late. Um, However, he's still on crack. His quote, and this was on First Take this morning, or I should say yesterday, August 22nd. There's no question that the Falcons are Super Bowl contenders. Now, I understand if you have them winning the division because the division is pretty weak. But if you start talking about Super Bowl, I'm not sure where this goes, and I would like to see what you think here, Zach.
I think your analysis of division versus like Super Bowl is kind of accurate. Like, look at the rest of the NFC. Like, you gonna say Atlanta stacks up with Detroit? Are you gonna say they stack up with the Niners still, even with everything going on? Are you gonna say they stack up with even the Cowboys, like the Eagles? Like I don't know. Yeah, like I think it's far fetched. It's definitely a little clickbaity. In my opinion, but on the flip side, like you said, I can at least see why there's a lot of momentum or hype around the Falcons. I think the other unknown kind of thing though is that Kirk Cousins still is coming off an injury um, that we haven't seen him play since that injury. So, I mean, he could come back and be a little less mobile, or maybe not be able to navigate the pocket quite as well, or maybe he can't even drive as hard off of that back leg or something. Maybe there's just not as much zip. It's just there's way too many unknowns. And the team was 7-10 last year. Like you're looking at a 7-10 team. I know they made a lot of additions, but
Yeah, but
Super Bowl contenders is rich. That's
the
rich.
quarterback spot matters, and I think they're very confident in Penix as well. So I don't think they really care who plays quarterback for their team. Like they shut Penix down for the rest of preseason because they saw enough from him in the first game
Still don't understand that.
as a backup. Okay, moving
And
on.
your eighth
But
overall pick.
yes, it makes no sense. I feel like if you see Cousins go 3-3 to start the year, they're just gonna unleash Penix and be like, okay, have fun.
But then what do
Like
you do with Kirk?
I don't know. I don't know.
No one's taking him. Like you're not gonna be
No,
able to trade him.
no, I have no idea what's gonna happen because that's again another immovable contract in my opinion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those at the quarterback position as of late. We got into that
Daniel Jones.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the Falcons, realistically, we will be talking about them in probably 2 to 3 years. I'm not saying this season. I think division winners this season could be a stretch to some people because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers still have their core together from last year, and Baker Mayfield had a great year last year. So I feel like you can't take away from the Buccaneers just because the Falcons made moves. I feel like chemistry is still a thing.
Mm.
Um, I think Drake London's bound to have a breakout year just because of the quarterback play. Again, makes a difference. Bijan Robinson's going to get unleashed. I'm sorry, Artie Smith was not good for that Falcons team, so have fun with him in Pittsburgh. Um, Maybe he's better in Pittsburgh. So, excuse me, but I think a change for them was a good idea, and I think it's going to pan out very well for them. But still think it's going to be a little bit of a dogfight, minus the Panthers, because Panthers aren't really anything.
Yeah, because I don't think the Panthers win more than 3 games. And I mean, at this point, I feel like they're comfortable just taking stray shots whenever the NFL is talked about. It's like the Panthers. What do you mean? Do you mean the team that like made a couple of the worst trades in NFL history, like literally two or three of the worst trades in NFL history just within the last like 12 months? Like that Panthers
Manage,
team?
yeah, the team that has management that throws drinks on fans.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, now that Carolina's done taking strays, because we're talking about Atlanta here, like I do think Drake London has a better season. I do think Bijan has a better season, and I do think Kirk has like a decent season. But again, like it seems like they're looking at their window is like right now. Like you don't bring in Justin Simmons on 1 year deals and trade for Judon without a contract. Like you don't do these moves unless like you're like they're more all in than the Cowboys are. Now the Cowboys are taking astray, but like they're all in. Like they're showing their hand right now. The Falcons are all in. So again, why do you draft Penix? Why do you give Kirk that big of it doesn't mesh. Um, and the only reasonable doubt, or like reasonable, I guess I shouldn't say reasonable doubt. The only reasonable like good thing that I'll say is kind of good management wise going off the Falcons right now is Raheem Morris. Because I
Yeah.
think Raheem Morris is going to do really well in Atlanta. I think I think he's going to really establish a good culture there. So that can also right a lot of wrongs. The Steelers haven't had a losing season once during the Mike Tomlin era. The rosters we put out in the field have not always been worthy of winning seasons.
Something that
And culture matters. So Raheem Morris, I think, will bring that.
I agree. Something that's very exciting to me because I've been waiting on it, and it's very like he's been very inconsistent just because of the coaching and quarterback play. I'm waiting on Kyle Pitts to blow up. He's gonna have a crazy year, I think. Um, I don't like the way he just responded to that, but he apparently has an early connection with Kirk Cousins. If Kirk Cousins is actually their quarterback for the whole season, he did use TJ Hawkinson a lot last year before ACL surgery with him. Um, like he's just a fan of using his tight ends, so Kyle Pitts is going to be a beneficiary from that. And then Drake London, after that, you don't really have any other receivers I can name at this point that are worth naming at this point other than Drake London. So he's, of course, going to have a good year. So I don't know. There's a lot of things to look forward to, but there's also a lot of things that are confusing. So maybe them getting Kirk Cousins was to win now. And then whenever he decides to decline, that's when Penix comes in with the young crew that gets the experience with Kirk Cousins. That's the only thing I can think of. Or you're dangling Michael Penix out there like, hey, trade bait, come get him. Like, that's all I can think of.
I mean, think about this. You still have Taylor Heineke on the roster in Atlanta.
Yes.
What are
Yeah.
you doing at quarterback, man?
I have no idea.
What are you doing? So, and then in terms of the other wide receivers, you got Ray McLeod and Darnell Mooney. Like those are probably going to be your two other starters. And don't get me wrong, like they've done a ton to the defense now, right? So like bringing in Justin Simmons, bringing in Matthew Judon, I think both of those are like fantastic moves. But again, they're win now moves. Like, are
Yeah.
you really ready as an Atlanta as an organization? Are you really ready to say like this is our year?
I think Justin Simmons is just a random plug-in play, just because nobody wanted him. But I think Judon's going to get extended after this year. I think that was their plan. I
How
think,
old is Judon?
I don't know, but Judon just basically came out and said, I never showed anything to the Falcons. This is my year to prove to them that I'm worthy of something. So
He's 32.
him saying he's still going to get an extension, though. You can't say it won't be like a 2-year extension after this year.
If he plays well. Yeah, I mean, and he might, right? Like I'm a fan of
Yeah.
Matthew Judon and everything. It's just it's hard to figure out what Atlanta is doing. And then for Dan Orlovsky to come out and say they're a Super Bowl contender right now,
It's just weird.
it's just
And
weird.
they did just extend AJ Terrell, I believe, as well.
Yeah, which
Um,
is great.
but
Like
it's a
for
young
player.
piece. It makes sense.
Right.
Everything else, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And my face about Kyle Pitts is because the best pass catchers in the league, tight end, receiver, whoever it may be, the quarterback is less relevant. And
Yeah.
for the amount of drop off we've seen, like his only good year, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure his only good year is with Matt Ryan. The last Matt Ryan year in Atlanta.
Yeah. It was probably the last year. After that, it was very rocky, kind of
Right.
gets buried. They're
Right.
saying he's more of a receiver than a tight end, so they don't really play him much in certain positions that he's supposed to play in.
Yeah, right. So it's weird after that.
Yes.
But either way, Matt Ryan was that one good season. And Matt Ryan is a potential Hall of Fame quarterback. No, that
No,
sounds bad as I come out and say that, but he did win an MVP, didn't he?
I don't care.
And I
If
mean,
people are debating Eli Manning, he's not in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you that. If Eli Manning is a debate, because Eli Manning should be a shoo-in. But anyway, like I just don't think Kyle Pitts is actually as good as everyone wants him to be.
Again, I want him to be great this year. So it's a want. It's not a will happen. Uh, again, if you're talking about theoretical crap here, right? Our analyst of the show, of the podcast, Kyle
Yeah,
Shank.
the more popular analyst we'll talk about today.
Sure, if you want to say that, decided to make a top 8 receiver list and a top 8 running back list. And we're going to run down his wide receiver list first and get some thoughts on this. If you look at this here, CeeDee Lamb, number 1, Tyreek Hill, number 2, Jamar Chase, number 3, Amon-Ra, number 4, Jay Jettas, number 5, Garrett Wilson, number 6, AJ Brown, number 7, and Cooper Kupp, number 8. Do you have any early thoughts after looking at this list on what you would like to expose of Kyle's expertise?
That Justin Jefferson ranking is criminal. It's absolutely criminal. I would put Jamar Chase far lower because the Bengals inevitably at some point throughout the year have downturns, injuries. They go through rough patches throughout different parts of the season. And Jamar Chase hasn't practiced at all this training camp and is still holding out and has 2 years left in his deal and won't step on the field again apparently until he has a new deal. So I don't even know if Jamar Chase plays the whole season.
I agree. I don't have a whole lot to say about this specific list. I'm okay with him putting Cooper Kupp ahead of Puka, like he says here, and Marvin Harrison Jr., like he says here, just because Cooper Kupp is proven. You haven't seen a lot from Harrison yet. That's a yet. I think he's going to be good. I just don't know about Kyler Murray. That's the question mark. And Puka's already dealing with an injury, and Cooper Kupp apparently looks 100% healthy. So the only other thing I would change on this list, I would drop Jamar Chase all the way down to number 7, and I would move probably everybody else up because I'm okay with Amon-Ra being ahead of Jefferson just because he's going to have the solidified role on the Lions like he had last year. I don't know if I trust Sam Darnold a whole lot. So that's where my question marks come in as well as Jamar Chase's contract situation. So
who's number 1 on that list right now? Sorry.
it is CeeDee Lamb. Me personally, in all fantasy football drafts, I think Tyreek Hill should go number 1. And that's over CMC, who is actually number 1 on Kyle's running back list. So the running back list here, we got CMC at number 1, Breece Hall number 2, Saquon number 3, Kyron Williams number 4, and then we got Bijan Robinson number 5, JT number 6, King Henry number 7, and Joe Mixon number 8. Again, any early thoughts after me reading off this list? What do you have to say?
I think Christian McCaffrey's going to struggle this year.
Yeah,
This is a guy that has a history of soft tissue injuries, and now he's dealing with a calf in training camp. And there's going to be more attention on him than ever in this offense. And there's a whole nother year of film out on how he was used, and now there's less weapons around, at least right now, to take that pressure off. So I don't like Christian McCaffrey number 1 here. I actually like Breece Hall number 2. Because I mean Breece, like when he has been healthy, and again he's another guy kind of like Cooper Kupp that seems to be going into this season healthy. I think he's going to take the league by storm. The only way that doesn't happen is if Braylon Allen just like demands touches, which could also happen in the Jets backfield.
yeah, I agree. I think Breece Hall is still their number 1 and their workhorse, so I'm not too worried about anybody taking touches from him. I agree with you on CMC. McCaffrey has a calf strain. If you remember correctly, Joe Burrow was dealing with a similar thing last year, and you see how that panned out for them. Especially with Ayuk kind of being in question. CMC is going to be leaned on heavily until they figure that out. So I would still kind of put him in the top three somewhere, but Brees Hall would be my number one running back on this list. I think that Kyron Williams is too high on this list. Me personally, I'm putting Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, and Derrick Henry all ahead of him. So Kyron Williams is probably number 7 on my list.
That's fair.
To be honest with you, if you're in a PPR league, a point per reception league, Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor are in roles on their team where they're just gonna get a lot of the workload. They don't even have to get into the end zone. They could get 10 plus points just off of receptions alone. Um,
Yeah.
Kyron Williams, I just don't think his output from last year is sustainable. Um, and then last thoughts from my end, and then I'll let you close us out here. But he left off Jahmyr Gibbs and A-Chain. Jahmyr
And
Gibbs dealing
Najee.
with an injury, and I think that's worthy of kicking him off the list just because he is dealing with an injury. But the only other thing I'll say about A-Chain is that he had a lot of touchdowns last year, and that's something else that I think is not sustainable. I think Mostert is still kind of the guy. And even if he's not, it's still a committee. So
Yep. And you also left off Najee. And with an injury to Jalen Warren, that actually becomes a decent play, I think. I'm not saying he should be top 8, but if you're going to list out those other guys as kind of like, honorable mentions, I think with the Jalen Warren injury, that becomes an honorable mention.
honorable mention, Josh Jacobs over Joe Mixon.
Also Josh Jacobs. I mean, heck, even Aaron Jones, right? Because like there was so much running back movement this year. You
Yes.
don't really know how those guys are going to fit into those new teams and like what workloads are going to be like and touch counts and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see. But this has been another episode of Life in the Stands podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for watching and listening. Remember to like and subscribe and let us know down in the comments what you'd like to see next. And we'll see you on the next episode.